talk about this movie, Spencer. Spencer is the latest film directed by Pablo Larrain. He did another film in 2019 that I didn't see. I think we talked about trying to catch it at one point. It was called Emma, E-M-A. And I didn't see it. Did you see Emma? Did you get to that one?
No. Did that come out last year or this year? I've seen it on like best of year list for both.
Yeah, it was a 2019 release, I think, or a festival release. And then I think, it got a little bit of buzz in 2020. People were starting to watch it then, and we talked about seeing that. Yeah, I didn't see it.
Yeah, I've heard it's quite good. I mean, I was thinking about this earlier. Like, I've only seen, I think, 2 other Pablo Larrain films before Spencer. I saw No with Gael Garcia Bernal, and then I saw Jackie, and I really like both of them. And I was just kind of like, I don't consider like Pablo Larrain to be like one of my favorite directors, Sorry, Pablo Larrain. I apologize. I think he has a pretty good track record, though it seems like that Apple TV Plus thing he did kind of came and went this year. So.
Oh, are you talking about Lacey's Story?
Yeah, the Stephen King adaptation.
That was one of those things that like people liked it, but it wasn't, it wasn't a buzzy release. But he directed all of that, and I think that's Stephen King, isn't it? I think that's a Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah.
So it should have more buzz in it. It should have had more buzz, but hey, what are you gonna do? I agree with you. I mean, I haven't seen No, but I have seen Jackie as well. And Jackie, I think, was a really good movie that not enough people, I think, came out to watch and celebrate. Like, it had some like very early awards buzz, but then I think some people are saying Spencer is going to be similar in the sense that like it had a splash and then it just kind of like fizzled out as like other movies took the stage. I think that movie, though, like people were looking at that in the same way with Spencer's, like the costumes, the production design, and then the actress, at the center of it. Jackie was a movie that was about Jackie Kennedy, and it was like a sort of I heard one critic refer, I think it was Katie Walsh, be like he makes these doomed princess movies, right? And so Jackie was that, and then
yeah. Well, I was going to say, I was going to get into this more in my review, but I feel like this is sort of like the inverse of Jackie, right? Because Jackie is a woman dealing with the aftermath of a tragic death, whereas like Spencer is like sort of like this like weird like inevitability of her death and like kind of like her almost kind of coming to terms with the fact that her life is going to meet her end. So it's like almost like the mere opposite of Jackie in that respect.
Sure. And Spencer is also a total anti-biopic where they are purposefully not trying to do a true story. They're not trying to give you a packaged recap of a person's life.
Or a fable based on a true tragedy is what the title card says, right? Yeah.
Which is a great way to start the movie because it does set your expectations there. So you can understand like, okay, a lot of this is going to be fictional, but the spirit of it is going to be like probably very interesting. It's not doing that thing like we've seen in like, what was it? The one that was last year with Renee Zellweger, that biopic, because wasn't that like Judy, yeah. Wasn't that movie kind of like just a moment of her life, but it was like they were back, maybe there were like flashbacks and things like that?
Yeah, there have been at least 1 or 2 other Princess Diana movies. I don't think we've gotten like a full like traditional biopic, but we had that one with Naomi Watts called Diana that came out, which was like kind of trying to do a similar thing. It was like the last 3 years of her life, I think. And focusing on an affair that she had. And yeah, I don't think we've actually ever gotten like a traditional Princess Diana biopic, but I feel like maybe more so than most other political figures or royal family figures, like her life has been so publicized and so speculated on stuff that it's almost basically kind of common knowledge, even for us in the US.
And The Crown is already doing it. The Crown, and their most recent season covered like the first, like I didn't see it, but I think it covers like the first few years, maybe the first decade of her marriage to Prince Charles and all that. This movie takes place in 1991, so it's been a decade since they got married. And the movie does rely a bit on you knowing about Princess Diana in order to sort of fill in the blanks. I think you could watch this without knowing all the details and still get the spirit of it across, but it definitely doesn't hurt, right, to have the context of what happens before and after this movie. In fact, I think some people have even said like, oh, I was confused because I didn't really realize, that she wasn't really divorced with Charles yet, but they were separated. And some people were a little confused about that, I guess. But I felt like I was able to pick up on that, sort of thing.
Yeah, Princess Diana, I was like very young when she died, so I don't have
Yeah,
that
me
much
too.
familiarity with her. But like, I don't know that. I know like kind of the general gist, like the thing, like some of the big pop culture moments, I guess, of her life, and then like
For
I
me, it
know
was the
about her death.
first.
But
Yeah, it was the first like major death tragedy that I was aware of. Like
oh,
the
really?
media frenzy around it. It was on the news all the time. I don't remember like a death of a single person or some kind of like scandalous thing like that happening. Because I was around like 7 years old, I think, when she
Okay,
died.
yeah. I think I was 4 years old when it happened, so I don't really have any cognitive memories of it happening. I mean, I guess I was around, but I don't like, I don't remember much about it, if anything.
You were hanging out, yeah.
Uh, sure. I mean, I was probably just thinking about kindergarten or something. So, preschool,
You
more
were in
accurately.
Belfast mode, like
Sure.
you're singing "Everlasting Love."
Just a movie, about me trying to process the death of Princess Diana as a kid or something.
That is what Pablo Larrain should have made.
That would be a very boring film. But yeah,
Yeah, it didn't last long.
that's all that. Yeah, that's all to say that my familiarity with Princess Diana was fairly limited, but I felt like I didn't have any questions or confusion about her life watching the film, at least.
Yeah, for me, I learned more about Diana later on. Like I remember hearing certain things. I had the understanding even as a kid that she was a highly publicized princess. In fact, I was even misinformed. Like I misunderstood her origin, and because I thought she was like a teacher. She was like a commoner who married a prince, and that was not the case. She came from nobility, like close to the family, but she was the first princess who, like, she was the first one to marry into the family who had a paying job before her marriage. She was a teacher adjunct, I think, and so that speaks to the narrative, right? There's this sort of like, oh, she's a princess of the people, even though she wasn't like nobility. It's kind of, I guess, similar to Meghan Markle, where she's technically a commoner, but she was like a major celebrity when she married Prince Harry, who is in this movie not him, but as a young boy.
Right. Well, I mean, that is honestly, I think, what Pablo Larrain has said. Like his intent with the film was to focus on how a woman like that can be so normal in a life that is so abnormal. And like you said, I think there's obvious reasons for it. But even then, like, I think the fact that she had this kind of nobility and all that, but she was willing to openly and emotionally interact with like the common people. Obviously, like the whole where I think she like touched an AIDS patient was like a big deal for that. Yeah. And like there's a lot of other things where she was like willing to like kind of like be with the people in a way that felt very revolutionary, I guess, like felt like something like that was almost unheard of for like the royal family that were just so like caged off and, elusive in this way that obviously she wasn't. And, with the tragedy added to it, gives her like this kind of weird balance of like mystique, but also there's like this like humanity to her life and legacy that, I think makes it still very painful for a lot of people to reflect on.
You can really tell that pop culture had to really process Princess Diana's death through like movies and TV shows, because she died in the 1990s from a car accident in Paris. And I always remember how like The Princess Diaries comes out a few years later. And to me, that always felt like a sort of reclamation of that princess, who kind of comes from seemingly humble beginnings. And then I think the sequel to that movie was very much sort of like echoing the ideals of Princess Diana and what she meant to people, but kind of using film and using pop culture to sort of bring her back, almost to like sort of revive that message. Now with Spencer, this movie is doing something totally different from anything I've ever seen from a film or a show or anything tackling Princess Diana, because I like you said, I think Larrain does understand that people know the story inside and out. A lot of people are sick of people sort of capitalizing on how publicized her death was and capitalizing on that recognition of her name in order to pump out art to make money. There is that element. So I really, really love what Pablo Larrain is going for here. Like the fact that he's going for it at all, which is, as we said, it's a fable. It's a sort of like high concept, fictional, let's just make a movie that really just like hits on this moment in time. It's not about her death. It's about, it's several years before. And it's her at like a pivotal moment of her life, just a couple of days around Christmas time. It is a Christmas movie covering the psychological trauma she went to in just a capsule. the sort of things that she had to deal with, from not having any freedom, not having enough agency, dealing with, there should be trigger warnings, I think, for this movie and for what we're about to talk about, but there's a lot here about eating disorders. And there's a lot here about what she did to her body in order to sort of live up to not just the pressures of the royal family, which she always felt disconnected from and always uncomfortable around. And the film even uses like the house to be this constantly uncomfortable place. It's like The Shining sometimes. And, they
absolutely.
even have like the air quality, like it's cold and uninviting. It's super on the nose.
Well, I was thinking that too, because I was like, I know I just went through like a month of horror movies, but it feels like this is like kind of like horror adjacent at times in a way that I didn't anticipate but really liked. Like it feels like, like the house is literally like suffocating her at times. Like it's, even though it's like this huge expansive house, it feels like constricting at so many different points. And like how, she can't she physically cannot leave. Like she keeps trying to like walk away and these people keep pulling her back in a way that, is a little literal, but in a way that I found pretty affecting and engaging.
Yeah. It's haunting, and it has a horror score by Johnny Greenwood, the best score of the year in my opinion. I
one of the best for sure. Yeah,
I easily my favorite, and I think it's gotta get nominated. I could definitely see it winning.
Well, yeah, it's a big year for Johnny Greenwood. He has this. He has Power of the Dog. I think he did the score for, and then he also did Licorice Pizza. So he'll probably get nominated and win for at least one of those, I think.
I think so. I think this is his year. I think that Phantom Thread was an unbelievably good score, and I still listen to it. It's that good. And, speaking of Licorice Pizza. But yeah, so with Spencer, I refer to this in my review as it's like a ghost story where the ghost is still technically alive, right? Where a lot of things happen, but it feels like a ghost is going through it. And it's such a fascinating way to tackle this subject matter. There are scenes where you can't take them literally, and you have to sort of wonder, is she doing this in real life? Probably not. There's a scene where she's eating something, for example. It's okay, that's clearly not the case. And there are even moments when these things are played for laughs. I got a huge laugh out of this movie involving, I won't give it away, but it involves the score, and it involves the revelation of where music is coming from, that even though I was terrified by what was going on, I was unbelievably I felt all of this amusement and laughter from it. It was kind of disconcerting almost. But also this movie is very light, and there are moments here, I think one of the best scenes in the film, where it's just Diana with her kids, and it's like a breath of relief and fresh, there's warmth all of a sudden, the color palette changes, and she's just hanging out with her kids and goofing around with them late at night. And it's one of the best, it's probably my favorite scene out of the whole movie. There's a lot to talk about here, and I want to be careful about what we say, but I want to turn it over to you. I also want to say Kristen Stewart, I think she's really good in this role. And if she wins Best Actress, I think it's well deserved, because she puts on a heck of a performance. I've seen some criticism toward her performance, and maybe we'll get into that, but I think it's spot on.
Yeah, maybe I missed this, but I was kind of surprised leading up to it that there wasn't more controversy about an American playing such a iconic British person.
Yeah, and she does a great job though with it's not a Princess Diana impression. She's not doing a Princess Diana voice. She's just doing a British accent. She's doing her own thing with it, which is also very fascinating.
But I think I would hope that's a credit to Kristen Stewart, that people are just oh, well, Kristen Stewart's doing it. Well, yeah, she was great in Personal Shopper. Why not let her play Princess Diana? But, I don't know. Maybe it was just because last year there was so much going on. People didn't speculate on that. But I just feel if an American got cast as James Bond, all hell would break loose in the UK. It would just be it would just be pandemonium over there. But an American plays Princess Diana, I don't hear a peep about it. So, and I don't think there should be, but I just find it amusing that there wasn't.
I'm always happy to see that though, just because look, we have British actors play Americans all of the time. It's such a double standard, and we don't care. We're just hey, yeah, come on in. Water's fine. Benedict Cumberbatch.
I think more it's usually just oh, he was British.
Oh,
though
cool.
I feel though with, I don't know. I still need to see Power of the Dog, but I kind of feel anytime Benedict Cumberbatch plays an American, it's always very apparent to me, because it's always just
with Doctor Strange.
Well, howdy, y'all. My name is
Laurie.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh yeah, and Mass, Black Mass. That was it.
Well, I was thinking of what was the Guantanamo Bay movie that came out this year with Jodie Foster.
I saw that one.
Okay, well, he's just like, I'm your Southern good boy, and I'm just, a regular old American. In a way that, I mean, I like the movie fine, but I thought that was kind of funny. But that's neither here nor there. That has nothing to do with Princess Diana or Spencer. But yeah, no, I was quite taken by her performance. One thing I really, really enjoyed about the film is that I think it channels something about Kristen Stewart that I find really fascinating, and something that I think a lot of filmmakers have used well, which is that, like, even though she's obviously like a beautiful, talented actress, she always feels deeply uncomfortable, like in her skin, and feels like she's like almost like kind of like crawling out of her body in every like role that she's in, even like some of the Western films. And I think that's part of the key to why I think she's such a endearing screen presence. There's like something about her where it just kind of feels like she's just uncomfortable with not only her fame, but just the idea of being alive. And I think that's a really inspired idea for casting her as Princess Diana. Like this woman who is, always in every single moment, even like these personal times in her life, she's expected to be like this kind of prim and proper person, like always expected to be the elegant person, always expected to be like Princess Diana, always expected to be, like on in this way that, like, even like in her personal life when she's just like with her kids and stuff, she has to kind of embody this certain image. And like, even, like when she tries to have a moment by herself, there's always someone around like being like, oh, you have to be like this thing, you have to be here, you have to put this dress on and stuff. And I think that makes Kristen Stewart's casting really inspired, and I think she fits into the role really well for that reason, because she's able to kind of play into that inherent uncomfortableness with being a celebrity, with being this person kind of fitting this image at all times. But also, I just think she's able to kind of acknowledge the sort of like the facade of really like being in the royal family, but in a way that feels genuine, and which is a really, really tricky balance that I'm really impressed with how she's able to pull off in a way that, I think it's just really a great credit to her as an actress and as a screen presence, that she's able to kind of find this really tight balance between being this kind of idyllic image of Princess Diana, but finding this, somewhat falsified image of like who she was behind closed doors, which is obviously, a personification, because we won't fully know unless, maybe something comes out from the royal family, which it probably never will. But I think, just that's all a roundabout way of just saying that it's a really tricky performance to pull off. And I think she deserves a lot of credit for it, because she does a great job.
It's also a tricky movie to pull off because, like you said, by tackling who Princess Diana was behind closed doors, you do run into the danger zone of your film feeling exploitative of this human being. And I think it could have very easily fallen into that trap. Some people still think it did, in their opinions, but I certainly don't. I think that what's fascinating to me about this movie is the fact that Princess Diana was a fairy tale that turned into a tragedy. It was this fairy tale romance that turned into all of this scandal because of her alleged affair and Prince Charles' affairs, and then it ended in tragedy. It ended, her life was cut short. And this movie is sort of unpacking through a character study, a really great character study, what was really like, what can be at the heart of a person going through something like this. Like, one of the things that I think is brilliant about what Stephen Knight, the screenwriter, kind of lays out here in terms of like the screenplay is she barely interacts with the royal family, like almost never. Like, she has, I think, maybe one scene with the queen, and it's very memorable.
Directly. I mean, one direct scene with the queen. Yeah.
It's like one-on-one. She has like one-on-one scene with Prince Charles, but most of the time she's interacting with the help. She's interacting a lot with Sean Harris, the cook, who his introduction in the film is brilliant in terms of like, this movie is like a gourmet food, there's a lot of food porn in this, including,
I won't give away, but there's a chain at the end of the film that great.
Chef's kiss.
Great stuff. Because I was talking with my friend who I went to a movie with. We were just kind of like, he was telling me, hey, did you know that Prince Diana was a big fan of this brand? And I was like, oh, I had no idea how that happened. It's just like, I don't know, but they're like making sweaters for her and all this stuff for the lead up to the film. I was like, oh, that's kind of an odd choice. Wouldn't it be funny if that brand was in the movie and then the end of the film happened and it's like the Super Bowl happened for us because the theater was mostly absent. So it's just like, it happened. It's
that's
here.
Funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I was saying, I mean, she basically mainly interacts with the people who I think as the film posits, that she can trust. Like she feels like she can connect with because, they're not nobility like her, but they are, they're not royals. And so she interacts with Sean Harris. She interacts a lot with Sally Hawkins' character, who plays her royal dresser. And she sees her as a friend, but then she does start to get the feeling. She starts to get the anxiety of like, who can I trust? Who's saying things about me? Who, all of the gossip is getting to her. And it's a movie about anxiety and depression, and how we can feel like relationships, like people are turning us against one another. And
Timothy, the walls are always like echoing with whatever she says.
Exactly.
Even if it's it's
everyone
really
hears everything. It's very blunt about all that messaging. And Timothy Spall also is kind of one of those characters who's, always given her gruff about every little thing, right? And he's the major.
Perfectly cast.
Yes,
Timothy Spall.
100%.
Great grump. Just a great grump.
But I honestly think that this movie gets a lot of things right. I've seen the main criticisms I've seen that I do think are kind of valid, but they don't ruin what my enthusiasm for the film. I'm pretty high on it, but some of the criticisms I have seen have been like, okay, there are one too many or several too many times when they explain the metaphor, which I do get. Like there are a few times when I think it can be interpreted as Pablo Larrain thinks we're dumb. And he's like, okay, so you have to say that like she sees herself as the pheasant. We can't just have that sitting in the air. I have my own reaction to that sort of like blunt metaphor commentary, but I'll let you say something for sure.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if that's fully Pablo Larrain or if that's Stephen Knight, who I don't know if we mentioned wrote the screenplay. And I know
hot off Serenity.
Hot off of what was that awful movie that came out this year, Lockdown?
Oh yeah, he did do Lockdown. I forgot about that.
Yeah, because I was thinking it's funny that he did one of the best films of the year and arguably the worst.
Yeah, there you go. And then one of the worst of last year's too. And then he hasn't made a lot of good films in general. I guess
wasn't
Locke
Serenity
is probably
2019 or was that 2020?
2019, but we were seeing it early 2020. But he did Girl in the Spider's Web, which wasn't very good.
Okay, I never saw that one.
I didn't really like Allied very much. I thought Burnt was okay. But and Pawn Sacrifice I liked Pawn Sacrifice, but Locke I think is probably his big movie.
Yeah, Locke.
Like, yeah, that's good.
Well, that's why I was excited, because it's just like he's really good about writing like a contained like chamber piece like that,
and he directed it too.
Right? Yes, exactly. So I was excited for that reason, and I think a lot of the stuff in the script, I don't think it's a bad script per se, but it does rely a lot on text over subtext in a way that like dialogue can be very literal. A lot of the visual metaphors are kind of on the nose to a comical degree, I think, at times.
Yeah.
Including this whole thing with Anna Boleyn. In a way that was
you
just
don't
like,
have to say it.
I got it the first 10 times. Like, you can kind of calm down. I just feel like that's where I feel like, okay, like, put a little trust in your audience. Like, we can figure this out after 3 or 4 times, Like, I think I wasn't bothered so much about, like, the, like, pheasant stuff and things like that. Like, I think that was done a little bit more tastefully. But, yeah, just I think, for me, that's what holds this back from being, like, a great film, is just that there's just so many times where it feels like the movie doesn't trust itself, or it doesn't trust its audience to be willing to be a little bit more subdued, a little bit less obvious and on the nose with what it's trying to say about Princess Diana and stuff like that. And I think if it maybe respect itself or its audience a little bit more, it could have found that balance and been even more profound in what it's communicating. But as it is, it feels like it's kind of robbing itself at different points, especially in the second half.
I get that. I have my own sort of like pet theory for what Knight and Larrain are trying to get across. And look, this doesn't disqualify, I think, the criticism. I think it can still very much be like, okay, please don't do this. But I think what he's trying to get at is, I think they're doing it on purpose. I think they know that it's really like, over explanation-y. Like, you don't need to say that people are smart enough. But I think they're just trying to be like, okay, but everything in her life was so subtle, and so like everything is spoken and has double meaning. So I think they were trying to like present it as like, what if like the metaphor was just said out loud, like just say it, because it's less that the impact of knowing that she's the pheasant, and it's more of like her recognizing it and coming to terms with it. I think that's what they're going for. I don't think it works for every instance. Like, I think there are a couple others. Like, I think the Anne Boleyn thing is the biggest issue, but I think there is this sort of like intentional effort to let it be clear to the audience, not that they need to know that it's a thing, but that she knows it. Right. And I still get like the criticisms can still stand for people because you're like, well, you trust that she knows that. I don't know. I think that because the movie is so abstract in other ways, they're just trying to like not lose sight of how smart and, that this is the metaphor that she is like grabbing onto for herself. And there is something unique about that I kind of appreciate about the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I guess for me, I find myself more frustrated by it because all the other tones that they're striving for, I think, throughout the film are done really effectively. Like you said, even though it is speculative and kind of verges on like tabloidy kind of ideas about Princess Diana, I think it is able to be fairly tasteful in its presentation, be a very lovely, well-made film, and also like kind of have like these like Cassavetes-esque like woman under the influence sort of touches as well that kind of give the movie a jagged edge that somehow doesn't interfere with, like I said, the kind of more polished, pristine qualities of the film. That I think that stuff. It's so well done and so well balanced throughout the film that when it does kind of do like a clunky visual metaphor like that, it just becomes more jarring to me because it's just like, well, you're doing so much of this stuff so well already. Why not just give yourself a little bit more faith to just kind of let that be a little bit more artfully done, I guess.
I agree. It could have been balanced better.
Sure. Yeah. So that's my takeaway from that, at least.
Sure. There was the cinematography. Sorry, I couldn't resist. No, the cinematography was quite quite top.
John's watching The Sopranos right now. If listeners don't know.
Yeah, I want to start doing that more often. In terms of, there was a cinematography, but no. So the cinematography here, Claire Mathin, big year for her. I mean, she's coming off of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which the cinematography in that was unbelievably good, and then this year she has not just this movie, but also Petite Maman, which gorgeous, stunning movie, where that movie had also a lot of exteriors, a lot of woods, a lot of, I
might see that Sunday.
I hope you do.
I'm going to try to.
It's such a quick, lovely movie. And with Spencer, this movie has a really big range. I mean, we kind of have mentioned how suffocated she is inside of the like Christmas house, but there are also a lot of like road shots here. There are a lot of like her wandering the wilderness. There's a shot of a scarecrow in this that is just like, it really sticks in your brain. I mean, everything is just shot in such a striking, lasting way, I think, in a way that's really punching above what I think Jackie was doing. I just think that Larrain really found a kindred, like somebody who can really like bring his vision forth in a way that's really great. So big credit to Claire Mathin for the cinematography here.
And I mean, I don't know if it needs to be said, but I think it deserves to be said. The costumes in this movie are fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's kind of a given it's a Princess Diana film, but
because the costumes are part of the story.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, they're a big part of the story.
They're a big part of the story. They're a big part of Diana herself.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, if Kristen Stewart doesn't win Best Actress, I'd be shocked this movie didn't walk away with a Best Costume nomination at very least.
Dune is the one. I think Dune is going to be the
for costumes,
the juggernaut for costumes and for the technicals, because the costumes in Dune are pretty. I mean, I could see the Academy being like, but you're an adaptation. You had something to really build off of. But they could say the same thing about this, where it's like, okay, but you have, although they do have original outfits in here that are striking against the real life, which is, I mean, that's so impressive.
I just feel like the costumes are such a big part of the story here that would help it win over Dune, where it's like, I feel like
I could see that. Yeah.
Dune is more about like the sound design, the maybe cinematography, maybe the score and stuff like that. I feel like that's going to be like what the Academy takes away from Dune in terms of award season.
Sure.
And costumes
it might be the case where they're like, okay, we gave, I'm going to vote Dune on like all these other things like cinematography and production design, but then with, I want to give Spencer something, you know what I mean? Like I could see that. That said, they might be like, but I'm giving Spencer Best Actress. I mean, you know how the Academy is. They can't be controlled.
And I mean, like, obviously, I think like Cruella and stuff's going to get nominated, and like maybe House of Gucci and stuff like that. So like there'll be competition, but I mean, we'll see.
We will see. That's all I got for Spencer. I really liked this film a lot. It's not one of my absolute favorites of the year, but of the award season bunch, it's one of the ones that really hit me the hardest. And I think that it's so fascinating. We mentioned this is an American actress in the role. This is a Chilean director, and they're doing something that is really transporting you to this like moment in time in the British royal family that I think is, even though I don't think this is going to top all the best of the year lists across the board or anything. I think it is one of those movies that a lot of people, a lot of critics and essayists are going to look back on at being like, man, that was a really good, like understated sort of like breakdown of a person's psychology in such a unique way. Like when people are talking about, I don't like this biopic because X, Y, and Z. Here's a movie that really did in a more interesting way. I think that it's going to be a great reference point for years to come.
Yeah, and I think it's also just a weirdly kind of timely film, too, because I think it's worth noting that I presume they wrote this last year. They filmed it this year in January, so it is, I think, it's kind of hard to ignore, like, the COVID-ness of it. Like, it is, like a film in one confined space. This kind of, like, literal idea of, like, being suffocated in one location, stuff like that, makes it weirdly kind of relevant to the pandemic in ways I don't feel like I want to dive too much into, but it does feel like a part of the text in a way that I think will make it quite a film for the now. I don't know if you feel similarly or want to even comment on that at all, but it's something I thought about.
Totally. Yeah. I consider, like almost like a post-pandemic movie in a sense. So like, I don't think that it's commenting directly on like lockdowns or anything like that, because it's not locked down.
No, I don't think it is. I mean, Stephen Knight made his lockdown movie before this, and it was awful. But
there is a general stifling of like the world just feels so tragic and so uncertain that I think is more of a post-pandemic thing. It's like we're coming out of it and like things have only gotten worse. And I think there's that sort of vibe to this movie that kind of echoes. Just
as like kind of general sense of foreboding, just kind of like this idea of just like you can't really like you have no sense of control, even though everything feels like timed out and like, everything feels like so scheduled and manipulative, but there's like this like suffocating sense that you can't like escape at any point in a way that I find really affecting and, like I said, really timely right now. And just I think it's a really, really well done film for many reasons.
I agree. Spencer is now playing in theaters. It came out in the US and the UK this past weekend, and if you can check it out in a theater, definitely give it a watch if you can do so safely. I saw it at home, but I definitely got plenty out of it in that format as well.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters, and I would definitely recommend seeing it that way.
We'll see how the box office does. It's a $16 million budget, and it had a bit of a slow start. So I don't know if this one's going to, but I think it's going to have awards legs, it's going to have an initial release. And I think that it'll get some I think that it has a shot at Best Picture. I think you think that I'm wrong about that.
No, I think
there's a lot of competition.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, I just don't know how well it's going to do. Right. I mean, I think it seems like a lock for Best Actress. Like I said, it seems like a lock for Best Costumes. Maybe like supporting actress for Sally Hawkins, and maybe
I think that's. I mean, Timothy Spall. There's a little bit of action there, but I think Belfast is real. There are so many other movies that are kicking up. In terms of supporting actress, supporting actress. I think Best Picture is a question mark. I think, but and director as well.
Editing, I think, are two pretty likely ones. But we'll see. Yeah.
We'll see. And I hope that I think that it is the kind of movie that might get like a late, an early 2022 re-release that could pick it up a little bit even further. And I think Neon will want to do that because it's definitely one of their big contenders this year. So that is Spencer. All right. Rotten Tomatoes for Spencer. Well, actually, 209 reviews have been encountered for Spencer. It's quite a lot for the movie. I think because it was at Venice, and it did a bunch of festival stuff. And I think critics were like, "Yeah, I got to see it."
Well,
so, what do you think the score is?
Is it doing well in the UK? I didn't ask that.
I don't
earlier. Know. I don't know. I imagine it will do well if it is, but maybe not. I don't know. Who knows?
It's not doing well in general, so I don't think.
Yeah, maybe not.
It only made like $2 million over the weekend.
Right. Yeah, I know it didn't do well at our theater. We're playing at the Harris Theater right now, and it's not doing fantastic. Not awful, but not great. But I would say the Rotten Tomatoes score is an 87%.
85. It was higher. Yeah, it's been dropping, like trickle dropping quite a bit. What about audience score? Audience score has 250 plus verified ratings. Where do you think it's at with audiences?
My heart says 74%.
Your heart is about to be broken. 50%.
Right. 50%.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
people took one look at Spencer and they were just like down with the monarchy. Like, no, thank you. I actually don't know what the cinema score is. I don't think it's been released.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're too
But I
scared.
know they didn't know what to make of it. The jury's still out with them. Yeah, I know the audience that were coming out of Spencer at our theater seemed a bit kind of like puzzled with the film, like they weren't really sure what to make of it. In a way that I could see audiences being kind of dismissive, just like, oh, well, that's I wanted like a movie about her, like her life, not like, like her, mental health or whatever, in a way that I feel like would make it, I think, more respectful later down the line. But I think at the moment I could see the initial reaction being fairly dismissive, but who knows? I don't know for sure.
I don't know either, but all right. No cinema score, so I guess we'll see. We'll see if people fall back in love with Spencer. Who knows? Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice or find us on YouTube. See you all next time.